ArtSpark Texas, sparking the creative in everyone. ArtSpark Texas Veterans presents Voices in Verse Writers Conference in partnership with the Rio Grande Valley International Poetry Festival, sponsored by El Zarape Press, Texas Commission on the Arts, and the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. Final words by Daniel Garcia Ordaz.
All right, so thank you all for that, for everything. It's been a lovely day. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Want to, once again, can't say enough about our presenters. And, I'm a school teacher, and, uh, this pandemic has brought to light one of the truths that I've been telling my students for years, which is you need two ingredients to have school. You need students and you need teachers. Everything else is nice, air conditioning, desks, superintendents, and so on. But you got to have those two ingredients. And certainly we learn from our students too. Um, and so here we have, I mean, yes, we have great presenters, but none of it matters without y'all. So thanks for being not I don't even want to call you audience, but participants, right? Active participants in these interactive workshops. So thanks so much for coming out. Certainly, thank you, to ArtSpark for, of course, putting this all together, and to all of the sponsors and people that donated, books and stuff like that. So something that I want to mention in these few minutes here. Again, thanks for coming out. And I want to give a few highlights of each of the presenters, what they mentioned. But something that I want to say is, in technical writing, uh, there's certainly, especially, let's say if you're writing for a journal, you're writing for an academic paper, or an industry of some sort. In technical writing, you certainly sort of have to, you're forced to, let me stop sharing, I suppose, for now. Uh, in technical writing, you're forced to consider your audience, especially if it's a paying audience. It's a built-in pre-assigned audience. But in creative writing, as Emmy pointed out, I mean, you look over your shoulder, and there's no one there, right? You're writing for yourself, and that's, I think, very important to remember that. There is a time and place, sure, for editing this and that, but be careful not, yes, you want to have present when it's ready, when it's time to publish. You want to put your best foot forward, right? You want to present the best that you have. However, there's a time and place to edit, but be careful when you self edit. Don't don't self edit with a voice with the voice of people that are willing to burst your bubble, all too willing to burst your bubble, happy to burst your bubble. As Joey pointed out, it does turn that paradigm on its head. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but some people just get off on that. As Joey mentioned again, you know, it's so much easy to destroy than it is to create, to build something. And so this world will say no to you very often. People have, when I was in an undergrad, a couple of young ladies laughed in my face when I read one of my poems. Um, they're not laughing now, and they're also not presenting now. What I mean, it's like, as an artist, it's tough to put yourself out there. As a creative being, as a creative person, it's tough to put your work out there, to sing, to dance, to cook, whatever culinary arts, whatever art you have. So thanks. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Just a quick point on this next slide. The question was earlier about ekphrastic pieces. I think it was Celia. I'm not sure who asked. The question was, does poetry ever inspire visual art? Normally, it's the other way around, right? Well, for example, when the artist Mario Godinez read my manuscript, then he created the cover, the eventual book cover art for, that is here on the screen, where it's Sensontle Mockingbird, um, and there's images of the skeleton images like Romeo and Juliet, as I mentioned before, an adaptation that I had conducted. There's a siren there, mermaid, if you will, and there's Frida here, and so on. So yeah, it sort of kind of worked the other way around too. All right, so next slide, please. So, we're all part of the family of writers. We're part of the family tree, part of our family tree as writers now includes Andrea, Emily, Nathan, Edward. Whether you studied under them long term, or whether you took a workshop for one afternoon or one morning, um, they're part of our family tree, and they have mentors that are in part of their family tree that they gained knowledge from, and they're passing it on to us. And we're all connected now from the ancient wisdom that has been passed on to them, and from the ancients to the present, to our contemporaries that we're learning from. We're family now, and we're here beyond this day to mentor each other, to help each other out as much as possible. Reach out to us, message us, uh, you know, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to continue, helping. I'm not saying like, oh, could you read my 300-page manuscript for free and give me feedback? Like, no, that's okay. Don't get crazy now. But hopefully we can continue this relationship. Thank you. Next slide. And so, Maya Angelou has this lovely poem that ends with these words: I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. And so, different genres, different styles, different backgrounds, different accents, different skin colors, and yet we're all human beings, and we're all getting through this thing called life, together. So the beauty of writing is that, and any art, is that there's room for different styles, or room for different music, different films, different poems, novels. There's so many stories, because we're so unique, that still need to be told. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so some of the highlights from Nathan Brown listing. He reminded us to think just outside the frame. What's outside that frame of the photo, right? The smells and tastes. Like Naomi, I'm not sure if you're still here, but Naomi mentioned earlier, how the perfume of smelling her mother's perfume, makes her cry and makes her tear up. Reminded me of in Suma Kid's book, The Secret Life of Bees. The main character smells Pond's cold cream. She didn't know what it was for years, and later she realizes, oh, it's Pond's cold cream. Like, it's not even perfume per se, but she remembers her deceased mother from smelling that. And so, and Nathan reminded us to go ahead and write back poetry. Allow yourself to suck, he said. In the movie Serendipity, Epictetus, they say, this Greek philosopher Epictetus, he said, if you wish to succeed, you must be content to be thought foolish and stupid. You're gonna be happy for people to laugh in your face, because you know what? That's going to build you. That's going to build you into a stronger person. Take that laughter, and they think they're bursting your bubble, but you're going to burst their bubble when your book comes out. Okay, next slide, please. All right, Edward, that last line that is on the slide. Edward said, we kind of intertwine our obits into our own writing. And so, Edward, I don't know if you're going to die first or me, but that's going to come up. We're going to speak at each other's funeral. So I better hear that line, because that's beautiful. And that wasn't planned, but, going backwards, Ferlinghetti, as Edward pointed out, the state of the world calls for poetry to save it. We need poets as first responders to crises. And I don't know if it was Susan or somebody who pointed out, oh, well, one of y'all said, well, I need to mute my mic because there's birds out there. They're all at Twitter. They're all loud. And, even in the destruction of this winter storm, the destruction of the tree and the garden and so on, there's still beauty there. And Edward reminded us to find, in that silence, to find the beauty. Thank you. Next slide, please. And so Emmy, left us with so much, lovely, many lovely things. One of her ideas was, she says, I initially try to make a mess, which goes with Nathan. We don't need to produce the very first, draft, especially. It doesn't need to be that pretty, just get it down. Later, you can decide if you want to crumple it up and rip it up, or work with it later on. So, and challenges us to find something about ourselves that we don't know yet. And that line that Emmy kept repeating is, go for the jugular, because those are the things that are going to become, great screenplays, great poems, great novels. Great lines in novels are when we go for the real meat and potatoes of it. We need to burst some bubbles. We need to go for the jugular as we're, so in other to write the real stuff, right? That needs to be said. Otherwise, we're gonna write stuff that's already been said, right? In order to get something unique, you got to go for the jugular. So next slide, please. And Andrea, as we just heard, I love that she combines science and art, and I mean like the art of writing. And if we Google techno, that Greek root techno, it means art and science. And so we have these people talking about STEM and STEAM, like, oh, let's add art to STEM. Art is already part of the T in technology. Technology means science and art. I love that she had us look at different definitions, which is a very difficult skill to define something. Uh, and she did it by looking at different points of view. I love that uh, she talked about this pressure, right? The physics of a bubble, how the pressure needs to be higher inside than it is outside because life is going to throw some stuff at you, you know. So don't forget to take care of yourself. Self-care, that incubation period is really important for writers. Sometimes you need to step away from something, step away from that list that you created with Nathan and so on. Separate yourself from that first draft. Walk away from it. Give it a day or two. Don't throw it away, right? But come back and maybe hopefully write about it. And that last idea that I wrote down for Andrea was that idea, that metaphor she gave us about oil and water, which they don't mix. You can shake them or whatever, like they're not going to mix. And sometimes though, whether it's your friends, that some of your friends don't make sense. Like they're loud and crazy, and you're super quiet and shy, or who knows, you're like oil and water, and yet you do mix well because artistically you can make things mix in that in between space. And so, next slide, please. Just a very quick thought. De Tocqueville, he was this French guy that came to the U.S. to kind of check out this new country and write about it philosophically. And he said, "Hey, be careful, y'all. You guys got something going pretty cool, but here y'all are afraid to speak up because the majority will burst your bubble. The majority will encourage you to be silent and stay silent, and will label you, and you know will not encourage you to write it out. So you need to be careful to the poets are the minority, y'all. The writers were in the minority. Most people are not writers. And everyone thinks they have a great opinion. As Nathan mentioned, like people write rants or whatever and put them out there. Doesn't mean that they're well thought out. That's what separates us is we have rants, but then we come back and edit them. And people are gonna say no, people are gonna make fun of you. The majority is gonna say that's wrong. And we need poets. When a dictator takes over a country, the first thing they do is they silence the artists and the poets and the teachers, y'all. They either silence them or they control them, use them as puppets. And so that tells you everything you need to know about freedom right there. Next slide, please. And so thanks again to all our presenters. Thanks to you in the audience. And then the final slide, I believe, or maybe one more slide, my bad. And just a big thank you again to Celia Hughes, the Executive Director for ArtSpark, and April Sullivan. And I'll give the floor to y'all. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you.